Hello. So for project three, the hypothetical COVID learning environment assignment, I decided to do in relation to my organization, California Pacific Charter. That is an online charter school that I've been with for the last 15 years. And the educational need that's going to be addressed really relates to an issue that's been ongoing, and we're trying to actually remediate this problem from COVID 19. And so the COVID related academic problem that we faced 2 years ago was addressing the issue of influx of new students to an online learning environment. CalPAC is my organization. We equip these students, newly enrolled students, with the necessary technology, meaning with hotspots and Chromebooks, but are still having issues with attendance. So, our organization was more accustomed to working with students that are more acclimated to online learning. So, we learned that we needed to be better prepared for the influx of students with little or no online learning experience. So, in all the school encounter issues with attendance, that's the main focus and issue from newly enrolled students. And we should have detected them earlier to consider an intervention plan for re-engagement. And so that's why we realized we needed a more of a streamlined protocol to address this issue. And so we had to consider the barriers, the possible solutions, and the analysis. But instead of just coming up with the plan, um, the educational need actually outlined some of the goals that we're trying to achieve as an organization, and number one being more of a strategic plan to detect students again, and B, considering the non-tech barriers and implementing a training session for teachers and school personnel to address better newly identified students who struggle with attendance. And lastly, an analysis and evaluation of this training if it was effective enough to remediate the attendance issue. So that is the educational need that's being addressed. And to order to see if this is successfully implemented, um, we need to do a needs assessment. So the needs assessment, in order to assess the current situation at CalPAC, it was necessary to analyze the organization's environment before even coming up with the plan. So the needs assessment assists as a tool to analyze our school's internal, external situation, and the analysis prepared me to identify the specific needs and causes and possible solution outcomes. This led to the actual action phase that will potentially improve the attendance issue that the organization faced during COVID 19. So, the first phase is really exploring what it is. The primary objective for phase one is to gain a sense of commitment to the needs and assessment, and assurance that decision makers will follow up promptly. So it's more of exploring the problem, identifying the concerns and the preliminary priorities to be addressed. So the primary concern is literally just students being withdrawn from the program if they don't attend school. If they don't abide by the school policy, attendance policy, they will be withdrawn. So the measurable indicator would be the days of absence to it. If they have a history or even just a trend of being absent, they don't show up for school, they're not logging in, um, we flag you to be truant. The data, excuse me, we're trying to look for is the number of newly enrolled students. We had over almost close to 100 students. We had about 97 students completely new to online. They were from a traditional brick and mortar. We haven't had a chance because we had an influx out of nowhere. We didn't have enough downtime to even consider if they had an IEP, if they had transitional placement, like basically if they're homeless, if they even have a dwelling, and even their history, attendance history, if they have trends in even truancy, chronic absenteeism, prior placement. And so that tells us that we need to, our preliminary priorities was identify these students that need the extra support attending school online. And so phase two is really gathering and analyzing this data. And in order to remediate the situation, we need to retrain our faculty and personnel at Calpac. So the purpose of phase two is determining what is and what should be done. And it helps determine the magnitude of the needs and the causes. It breaks it down to target groups, the target group here being the faculty and personnel at Calpac. And we want to define the needs. So how do we help students attend school online to avoid truancy? That's what we need, because we need to fix this, because also that drives our funding as well. And then the needs is a structured protocol, a strategy or plan to address questions and concerns for the students, for the learner, which is the faculty and the personnel, and earlier detection needed for students who need additional support to attend school. So how do we do this? What's the plan? We need to identify and analyze the causes. So students struggle with various factors. I mean, usually with adaptability, computer literacy. That is one, but we did not see the different factors that these newly enrolled students came with, like other barriers such as that contribute to the attendance issues. For example, IEP, homelessness, a history of truancy. We did not see that closely enough. We just thought that they're not logging in. So to summarize the findings for phase two, we realized the organization does not have a legitimate protocol in place in identifying these students early on. So students are then becoming withdrawn or basically placed in probation, affecting our student retention. So now we have phase three. So we need to make decisions. What do we do? Now we know our party needs is to develop a strategy for school personnel and for teachers for detecting students with attendance issues. So possible solutions: implement strategies to minimize potential attendance issues prior to enrollment. So before we enroll these students, what do we need to figure out? What are the things that might cause the barriers of them not attending school? And so the strategies that we're trying to implement is in two tiers. So the first tier would be the admissions team going through the attendance policy with the student and parent on Zoom. So that means they're able to get on internet, use technology, and before the actual enrollment, minimizing any potential attendance issues. So then the second tier will be the homeroom teachers. Will be in contact with students weekly and check attendance with a record of completed assignments within the learning management system, which is LMS. Now, that's a strategy. So how do we put that in a plan? We need a protocol. So we will have a structured protocol that'll be streamlined process for teachers, and we'll keep a shared running list of students who are truant and keep a track of their average daily attendance. So training for this process, which is the two tier, will be taking place during the weekly faculty meetings. It will take only perhaps 2 meetings to get this information out. And this is a strategy that could be added onto the existing strategy of how we engage with our current students. So the final report for phase three would be, with the COVID-19 pandemic, there was an increase of student enrollment, but the issue was student absent. That was prevalent. The needs assessment revealed different factors contributing to this issue. Thus, the immediate need is to develop a strategy to minimize potential attendance issues. So the action plan will be implemented by the school personnel through training in our faculty meetings. So with that as needs assessment done, that would also transition into what the goals are for this. So what are the measurable learning outcomes, and how we could use we could use new media literacy skills. So basically more skills that we could apply to meet these goals. So implementing new strategies and plans requires purpose and even learning outcomes. So to make the training the most effective, we need to apply the appropriate learning theories and even consider some of the new media literacy skills, more contemporary, really. But we naturally anyway display this in the learning process. So the faculty and the school personnel. So I keep saying school personnel, but that would be the admissions team, are defined as the learners in this learning environment. The measurable learning outcomes are as follows: refine and restructure existing strategies for student onboarding process, train homeroom teachers to track attendance, re-engagement strategies, and lastly, support teachers and other school personnel to work collaboratively to detect students with attendance issues in training meetings. So those are the learning outcomes, and how we learn is presented and reflected with new media literacy. So with especially adult learners, so our faculty and our school personnel, um, I feel like I believe new media literacy skills are were embedded and into like the initial discussions of how we could remediate this attendance issue. So eventually, that discussion started, and then the training. So the skills demonstrated by the learners were collective intelligence, networking, and distributed cognition. Um, and the collective intelligence has its roots, for example, in collaborative learning, which also creates a space for participatory culture for faculty and other school personnel to share their knowledge with each other. So I think Brown and I want to say Dewey Good, and they mentioned that learning should be engaging and best understood within communities, and so learners collaborating can gain new perspectives. So we have the missions team doing something and the teachers doing something, but we never actually collectively come together and learn from each other. We know what our job titles are and what we're supposed to do within the lines, but do we collaborate with each other? So it's a time and space to share knowledge. Networking is another media skill that learners can employ in the learning process. So connecting with other members of the organization, not just teacher to teacher, but with other personnel. This could help meet the second learning objective, which is review strategies for engagement for students that lack consistent attendance. So enrolling students is a group effort, and a streamlined process. So we need the admissions team to screen the students with like histories and their capabilities, while the teachers inherit them to ensure that they're consistently attending school. So it's a two-tier again. So so again, however, instead of just staying within the lines of our job space, it's necessary to develop these strategies as a team. So just implementing again the learning theory of social constructivism, Vygotsky, we actively participate in creating our own knowledge through collaboration and interaction. That's part of networking. And we also need to collaborate with other school personnel, especially as a teacher, to develop new knowledge and strategies to combat these attendance issues. So it's like a collective effort again. Um, and it also builds knowledge, which is the core of the social constructivist learning theory. And last but not least, we have the distributed cognition. This is where knowledge can be conceived as being distributed over a community of individuals rather than just being a single brain. The learners can share the knowledge. So the common theme here is just sharing knowledge, and work together in this online environment. And really, this could be extended to PLCs, even discussions, forums, COP. So it's required for full, meaningful participation, and it really reflects the Jenkins like participatory culture, because it is, if you want meaningful participation, we need to be active learners as well and active participants in the learning community, which is actually a huge shift from the individual expression to the community involvement. So there is definitely again a contemporary piece to it, where we used to learn individually, now we share. Um, so how do we know that this plan might be effective, or is it through an evaluation? An evaluation plan, really, the reason behind an evaluation is to ensure that the training meets and effectively achieves the learning objective. So, for the administration to continuously support teachers and other school personnel to work collaboratively, we needed first to see if the space and time provided were sufficient, and review other potential solution and continue the collaboration of discussions are needed to combat future attendance issues. So, evaluation will be in the form of a Google form, survey for teachers for resources and adjustments needed to help students better their attendance. Now, there is a pre and a post. A pre-survey will ask teachers and personnel what they hope to accomplish. What are the primary needs, right? To remediate the attendance issues. It could be different responses, but then we could also consider these different options. Um, It'll also do a post survey to determine what resource or adjustments are needed to help students better their attendance. So what worked and what didn't. And post training meetings, the learners will look for data for each homeroom teacher to go over a student's attendance and compare the retention data versus withdrawn students. This evaluation plan ultimately will can help determine the extent to which if our learning objectives will be met, and continue the discussions for improvement if needed. And here are my references. Thank you.